Good day. This is Agent Maven Aficionado Amy K. Gaskin, and today I'm joined by Linda McKenna of Golden Rule Senior Placement Services. And Linda is going to talk to us today about the 4 pillars of placement. Good morning, Linda. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this, Amy, and it's a real honor to do so.
Thanks. Well, let's get started. You've been in senior living for a while now, and why don't you give us a little bit about your background and how you got started in senior living?
Absolutely. Upon moving to Florida, part of my husband's corporate move, we moved near my parents, who at the time were much younger, 32 years ago than now, to be close to them and with my young family. Through that whole attrition, I entered in the healthcare realm. I ended up working for a home care agency, which is home health, and I elevated myself to a sales management position. I did that over a 20-year period. And then also I was the director of marketing for a large hospice as well. Through that whole 25-year plus career, I became very acquainted with the senior living industry, and most of my referrals or worked with was the elder population and happened to live in the senior living community. As that, my parents were aging, and I came to the crossroads when my dad was needing a lot more physical help. There is a 12-year difference between my mom and dad. But at 94, even though he was vim and vigor, I realized that he needed a lot more help or assistance than my mother could provide at home, but have an enriched life at the same time. And that was back in 2017. And at that point in time, I actually became a certified ALF administrator. So I knew the rules and regulations that was bestowed upon the industry. With that, I went ahead and placed my mom and dad in a lovely assisted living facility, again, because of his medical needs. My mother was a little bit more independent, but they were still together. So they got to enjoy a very good quality of life. At that point in time, I realized I could do this. I want to do this for others because I know what it is personally to go through these throes of overwhelming. It's emotional because now you are the one that's spearheading their future versus them making the decisions. So I opened Golden Rule Senior Placement Services Thanksgiving time in November of 2017. And the reason why I called it Golden Rule is because we treat our seniors the way we want to be treated ourselves. And I use that philosophy through my whole advocacy for seniors is I give them the respect that they deserve and what they should be guided with.
Nice. And you are involved with representing seniors in different organizations and stuff with the state too, right?
Yes. Besides being on advisory boards, I was appointed by the Board of County Commissioners for the healthcare seat in the county that I reside in at Hernando County. And that's the Well Florida Council that oversees the outcomes and the quality of measures that each county has access and resources to. And I also on their executive board. I excited philanthropic nonprofit, and they do right for the residents of each county. So.
And you seem to have a servant heart because you do a lot of volunteer work too, and your whole family as well. I mean, you have a very involved family.
Yes. One way of, I always said this, in order to get respect, you have to give it. My children have that philosophy. I'm blessed with 2 wonderful children. But at the same time is in order to receive compliments or the resources and everything from your community that is around you, you need to give back.
Absolutely.
It rains when that happens. When you are blessed with giving, you're all blessed. You're blessed back.
Yes. Well, I'm excited today about the topic, the 4 pillars of placement. It's near and dear to my heart because I followed that philosophy as well when I worked at A Place for Mom. I started there in 2010, and I did that for over 8 years, and I loved it. Advocating for the families and making sure they had the proper resources was always on the top of my list, to make sure that that happens. And that's one of the reasons why I started creating this show, is because there's a lot of resources out there that families just don't have. And they don't have the tools. And as you said, it's an emotional process to go through finding the right place. I think one of the most valuable things I learned from Marianne Bradley. She's a friend of mine that I used to work with at Place for Mom. She's now a realtor over in the East Coast of Florida. But she shared with me a document called Parenting the Parent. And so that is an awkward stage in life, especially now in the sandwich generation, where we're taking care of our children and our parents at the same time. And a lot of children, adult children, have a hard time with this topic. And that's one of the reasons why I suggest that they work with a placement agency like you. You need someone to hold their hand. You need someone to give them that encouragement. But I am going to let you do your thing and talk to us about the 4 pillars, and I'm excited.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Allow me to introduce myself. And as I said, thank you, Amy. It's honored for an esteemed person such as yourself, the aging maven that you are, aficionado. I really take this very much with a compliment. Allow me to do this and speak on a broadcast widely. So thank you for allowing me to introduce myself as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Okay, the next slide is, how does Golden Rule Senior Placement Services guide your senior loved one on their family and their family on this journey? You encapsulated it just a moment ago. It is a family. It takes a village. In order for this to work, it is getting, I don't want to say everybody's opinion, but everybody's buy-in. Mom and dad are, of course, reluctant to go to a facility. That's why we want to try change that acronym. Instead of assisted living facility, we're trying to call a senior living community, because it is a community. Once we approach this subject, it is tender, very difficult, because they're thinking they're giving up their independence and their decision making. But when we embrace them and bring them into part of the decision making, they're not going to be pushing you back. We're going to give a lot of access to them so they can view it. Realize when you're going through this with placement, they're thinking they're going to a nursing home, and they're going to be put away in a corner somewhere, and they're not going to be able to not only speak for themselves, but they're not going to enjoy life. Right. Actually, senior living is not that. It's an intense life. It's actually, you have to make appointments with your parents after they live there.
They're just doing so much.
It is. And you know what? Selfishly, even during the holidays, when everything, is done at home, or they are the ones who are the host of Christmas or Hanukkah, whatever that it may be, now they still can be a host, because you're going to visit them in their community, and they still can feel like they're hosting the festivities. So it's a wonderful thing. It's being on the same page. There's going to be multiple opinions by siblings, spouses, but the end goal is a better quality of life, and
exactly
the goal and what they deserve.
And some of those communities even allow you to reserve the private dining room, so mom can actually be the hostess again. That was important to many of the families that I used to place, having mom being able to do that. Some of the places actually have a welcome party where when you move in, you get to invite over like 6 or 8 people, some of them 12, just to invite them over to your home, and then you eat with them in the private dining room. So
it's wonderful.
It's a wonderful transition. And, so many seniors do have that connotation because, the nursing homes back in the 70s are what they were used to.
Yes.
And it's completely different today.
I agree with you. But the
And so
private
getting
dining
them in there and having them do activities and seeing what kind of awesome quality of life they have is so important.
Absolutely. And I love what you said about the private dining room. Guess what? You don't have to cook. You don't have to shop for it. You don't have to set up. You don't have to cook. You do not have to clean up. And you are really enjoying the festivity in it solely. Okay, the next slide, what we're going to be talking about is that the 4 pillars of need for placement. This is how I work at Golden Rule. I'm not saying that everybody works this way. The reason why I believe the 4 pillars, which is like the 4 knobs on a stool or the legs on a stool, the 4 of them have to be balanced. If one is off kilter, it's not going to be balanced. So I really direct this very important with all of our individual families who might be partaking more of it on this journey, or with the individual themselves. And the 4 pillars are financial, medical, social, and spiritual. They have to be balanced. And I don't care what stage they're in, physically and mentally, all of them have to be balanced. So
I totally agree with that.
The first one is financial. When I was in home health and hospice, I started with medical first. But unfortunately, with placement and going into a senior living community, because it is private pay mostly, financial has to come into place first. What somebody could afford and sustain themselves, or say, for instance, it's a spouse that is going to the senior living community, and while the wife or the husband stays back at their home, they're going to both have to be able to sustain themselves financially. So this is a very important thing. Because we want them to age in place, okay? Meaning that for lifelong experience. Not that we're going to only stay there for 2 years, use all the money, and then worry about something to transition later. Absolutely. I do not do that.
A lot of good philosophy. So many people have that philosophy, and so many people are like, well, I want to give her the best I can. Well, you want to give her some stability. Absolutely. And so, yeah, I totally agree on that. And some people think that they can just go tour anywhere, and then they realize that the budget is twice what they could even imagine affording.
Absolutely. So we really get hard and down and dirty on this subject. We talk about all their liquid assets as well too, not only to protect them, but we might have to tap into them. And there are many beneficial programs out there that could help subsidize it. My philosophy is I love a Lexus, but I only can afford a Volkswagen. So it's not about, when you go into this community, it's not about the chandeliers and the rugs or the ambiance of the place. It's care. So why is that important with it financially? Because you might in time, as you age in place, require more additional medical care and assistance. How are you going to be able to afford that when your base pay in this community is very, very expensive, when we could be more moderate? So we have to take into consideration the increased levels of care, maybe now or in the very near future, especially when you're talking about memory care.
There you go. Memory care is some of them are all inclusive, and some of them do have that extra level of care. Absolutely. So many people are unaware of that. And each state has different prices, and each area has different prices. And so one of my difficult situations was when I had multiple siblings involved, and we explored many different geographic areas, and we found out where mom could have the best quality of life at the best price. And so, when I did placement, I actually placed people in 38 different states because of that. And it becomes difficult. But if you organize it and orchestrate it right, the senior ends up better quality of life.
I agree. And nationally, you're 100% right. There's different budgets in each area. What would be in California versus Florida and New York, there is different price range.
Right.
I've been very beneficial, been benefited by working with a lot of my clients that I had the liberties, of course, placing all throughout the state of Florida where I reside. But I also have placed in Tennessee, Connecticut, New York, and Colorado, Arizona, but that is a very important component of it, is the affordability over a long period of time. So we do not want them to be subject of the state by any means.
Absolutely.
Now, medical. How does this play in placement? Well, an assessment has to be done by a medical doctor. for the prospective senior living community, and it really dictates the proper placement. The reason being, the medical doctor, usually the primary care physician, has to fill out a form. What we call here in Florida is the 1823 that has just been updated, where his or her patient needs assistance, needs supervisory, or is independent. And those are mostly on your ADLs, which is your activities of daily living. So if somebody needs assistance with grooming and bathing and all those ADLs, needless to say, those have to be available at that senior living community. But more importantly, we have to also take in consideration of their licensure and what is the cost of it. Now, licensure, what does that mean? There is various types of licensure to an assisted living community, that being what they call a standard license, which is the director of nursing in said community actually is in name only as a director of nursing. Unfortunately, she cannot or he cannot do any vitals, can't even apply a Band-Aid. So they have to use ancillary help or, of course, the aides of the community to provide care. When somebody is in that memory care situation, sometimes their ADLs are compromised more, even swallowing becomes an issue. So a licensure of the community comes very big as a key role, because if they have swallowing issues, they might be on a mechanical soft diet. That is not applicable to standard licenses. That's where they are going to be in the LNS, which is limited nursing services, or ECC, which is extra congregate care, where nurses and clinicians in the community that are actually staff of the community can exercise their skill upon that prospective resident. So it is a key role. Just because it looks great from the outside, again, care is the most important thing to me. Is you might need it now a little bit, but as you progress with your progression of your disease process, we're not going to be moving, 6 months from now because you're progressing. It's really important, the licensure now. So as you progress in place, you are able to stay within the same community.
Absolutely. It's different in every state too for medical licenses. Like for instance, there was a story in California that someone was living in an independent living community. The nurse, there was an actual care staff member who actually was a physical nurse, had CPR qualifications, and some man was choking. And California laws stated that if she performed CPR on him and injured him, she would be fired. And that just blew me away. Massachusetts has similar laws to that. But I will tell you, at the time I was living in New Hampshire, and most of the communities there, even if it was against the law, they would have all offered this woman a job, because we have the Good Samaritan law there.
I was just going to say that you hit the nail on the head. I had been the home care agency of a new standalone independent living facility, and most people don't realize they're not licensed by the state, so they're not governed. They don't have to have dietary restrictions, meal planning. They don't even have to have medical on board. But partnering with them, we did have one of our patients / their resident choking in the dining room. And of course, my nurse that was there, along with myself, we did the Heimlich. The management came up to us and said, absolutely not. You cannot touch a patient. We have to call 911. Well, it's great. Still call 911 because we might have to progress with that. But at the same token, the Good Samaritan law protects you. Needless to say, she expelled what she was choking on. She was fine. She was more embarrassed than anything else. But I cannot stand and sit by and not be able to provide care. So
what human could? I mean, if you have a heart, why would you want to watch someone suffer? And by the time you wait for an EMT to come, it's all over.
Exactly. I mean, they could have had a heart attack or, choked to death. And that's where licensure is really important. Think about it. If it's a standalone independent living facility, then not licensed by the state regulations that they have to abide for. It's a hotel license.
Right.
So the average person that should be living or age in an independent living facility, standalone, should be about 75, 80.
Right.
And they should not have many assisted devices. So that takes into consideration. I bring that all involved in it. And with that being said, medical part of it is it's very treacherous for a senior to get out to the doctor, even if they're still at home or when they do go into a senior living community. How do I want to say, you have a 15-minute window with that physician. You're on the best behavior. They present very well. They don't know the dynamics that are going on at home. Is the house cluttered? There is so much that goes into, are they eating the right foods that is conducive to the disease process? If they're hypertensive, are they eating salt-laden foods like frozen dinners? Because guess what? That's easily available.
Right.
So having a mobile physician, usually I start them at home. They still keep at bay their primary care physician, but honestly, mobile physician groups or clinician groups all wonder why is because they're great in emergent situations, especially when they're in assisted living. And it comes on a Friday afternoon, an event like a UTI comes up in play. What is the normal thing to do? Go to your doctor. And if that doctor's not available, go to urgent care or go to the ER. Nothing's better than actually having a mobile physician that can act really quickly, get that medication ordered, do a urine analysis, get that medication ordered. And by that afternoon, that person is on the road to recovery versus Monday when we could get to the doctor's office or in the ER for 14 hours.
Exactly, 14 hours. And so many seniors get UTIs now, and they don't even know they have it. It's not like it was when you were younger, when you have one, you have to go get checked.
Yeah.
So there's that, and there's always be preemptive, so we can make sure that everything happens, because the minute a senior has to have a UTI for a long period of time, that means they're going to not only need probably hospitalization, because one course of antibiotics isn't going to do it. They end up in rehab.
Yes.
And they end up falling. And that's one of the reasons why Family Care Space at Home uses, monitors the amount of frequency someone uses the toilet because of that UTI situation. So if they increased in amount of time using the toilet, alerts go out to a care circle, which can include a mobile physician. It can include an adult child, could include your next door neighbor, could include anybody that loves or cares for you. And when someone monitors a situation, they can say, oh, well, Claire is all of a sudden toileting twice as much. We need to go in and check on her. So, yeah. So and medical is really important.
And that care team can actually work even better for their resident. So what a great tool that you developed. Certainly that I'm going to definitely propose that to a lot of my communities, is to have that, and also to the families, because there is another level or eyes and ears on that resident, mom, dad, home, wherever that it may be. And you could work in conjunction with what I also offer is home health services. And it's 100% covered by insurance. So why would you use them? Because why is that important when they're moving into a senior living community? They're like, mom and dad don't need home health. They don't need rehab. Well, if it's a large senior living community, they can be walking more, maybe down to the dining room where it was just 2 rooms away. They're going to be ambulating more. So you want them to be physically able to do that, assisted or unassisted, but to strengthen them. Also, a lot of times there was a diagnosis code, because it underutilized, was adjustment disorder. I use that for home health all the time when I had my patients go into an assisted living. And it's a behavioral nurse that actually helps get them acclimated to their new environment. So that's why medical is so important, because if that is embraced the appropriate way, our future is really bright. It really is.
Yeah, it will cost you less money in the long run because you're being preemptive, and there's less likelihood of an accident. There's less likelihood of catching things later. Which, if you want to have you want to keep your loved one in the least restrictive environment for as long as possible. And if we can avoid things, then we should avoid them, otherwise it's just, you're literally sitting and waiting for something to happen. And when that happens, it goes beyond the need of a typical assisted living community, and you end up in a skilled nursing facility and you don't know what hit you. It's like it happens, and it can happen overnight. So that's why it's important to pre-plan.
Absolutely. I agree. Well, the next pillar is social. Socialization is very important for me as a placement specialist, because there's a variety of activities to participate in the senior living community. It provides mental stimulation for all levels. Mm-hmm. So just because mom and dad might have the beginning stages of dementia or in the little advanced stages doesn't mean that they cannot be involved in a social activity. There is a lot of games, name that tune, a lot of something that is stimulating. Everybody could sit in front of a TV set all day, and quite not, honestly, we don't want to do that now with all that's going on in our world. So mental stimulation, even having a conversation with somebody else, is helping that individual. There is also, in senior living, there is family-oriented social gatherings. I went to a French night, and it was France. It was wonderful. The food, the activities, it was wonderful with both of my parents. They were able to host us, and we were able to enjoy with them. There was dinner, dancing, a lot going on. And also socialization also plays a big part in online technology offered to communicate with family and friends. We noticed this a lot during COVID. Right. There is, FaceTime. There is a lot of platforms that family that might have been out of state or close by, but aren't able to visit mom and dad because of the fact of COVID restrictions, were able to utilize that technology. I will use my dad as an example. He's a retired naval commander, and he thought bingo was ridiculous. Okay. Right. I am not doing that. It's mindless, very high intelligent gentleman. And I, of course, had his assisted living programmed on my phone. So every time we called, it would be good, bad, or indifferent. I would take a breath. And it was Lisa, the activities director. And she says, "You're not going to believe what your father did today." I said, "What?" So she goes, "He played bingo." I'm like, "Oh, Lisa, you're delusional." Yeah. She goes, "Linda, it's the way we worded it." And that's why these people are professionally trained. Lisa not coerced him. She made him felt like he was in charge. She says, "Mr. O, you're going to come over and help me run the bingo." And needless to say, yes, he ran the bingo, but now he was with his other peers as well too. And he felt good about himself. So
everyone needs something special to do. I mean, there are some communities where, people, they'll have the seniors will actually fold the napkins. And it's not because they're understaffed. Well, many communities are, but because that there's a need to want to help and be part of it all. And, so giving them different tasks. Some people are in charge of the garden and watering plants, and they've raised flower beds. You can be part of a community. You have to want to feel like you're needed there and wanted there. And so being part of this socialization is so important. And again, I'm glad you mentioned the online technology, because Family Care Space and both Family Care Space at Community and Family Care Space at Home has the technology incorporated in the platform to do videos with your family. But not only that, when the caregivers are with your family, if they all of a sudden start talking about a special moment, wouldn't you have liked that activities director to have taken a video or a picture of your father doing the bingo and running the bingo, and then uploading it? So what happened was she would take the picture, it would get sent to the executive director who approves it. It then gets sent to the head family administrator, and then the family administrator says, "Yep, that's appropriate for my family and friends," and sends it out everywhere. And moments like that, because you could then talk to your siblings about it, your friends about it, and it's private. It's not like a Facebook or anything like that. It's just the people in your care circle or the people that care about you. So
if you could have that conversation with your loved one. "Oh my God, you did bingo today." You could have a deep conversation. And how did it go? A lot of times folks say, "My dad and mom are not doing this anymore. They're not active." I exempt that. What they used to like to do, which you touched upon, gardening, of course, they might not be physically able to do it anymore at their home. I will say, oh, that's an activity that we still can do. Of course, it's guided, it's helped. They have different ways of, mechanical ways of doing it.
Yes.
So I don't exempt what they used to like to do. Let's bring it back in a different aspect, so we can enjoy it again. So socialization is very, very important.
Yeah, and here in Florida, I've actually noticed that a lot of times I always ask them where mom grew up, where she went to high school, because ironically, I've placed seniors in Florida who were from other parts of the country that were actually reunited with friends they went to school with when they were in grammar school, elementary school, and they were already at the community. And a lot of these people don't even know that their former friends that live about 10 minutes away from them. So I think it's very important to make sure that you find out everything about the senior.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that idea. I think that's wonderful, is that they have their first friends right away.
Exactly.
New ones. Absolutely. Well, the fourth pillar to make it balanced is spirituality, is spiritual. How do I want to say, whatever denomination that you are, Christianity, Muslim, Judaism, whatever that it is, that should not be taken away from you. No. During COVID, we witnessed that. A lot of people weren't able to go to their place of worship because they didn't have access of getting there, or they didn't have access of viewing it online, their services. That's the great thing about senior living. They bring it into you. A lot of the times it's, Eucharistic ministry, it's Bible study. It might be, just talks. And spirituality is important because as you get older, you become even more spiritual in your being, because you know that your place on earth is now going to be transcend to your afterlife. So you become very intuitive of that. If they're still capable of doing, there's transportation to respective spiritual services in the area. They, load you on the bus, bring you to the church, mosque, synagogue, whatever that it may be. In some community, they actually have in-house spiritual counselors that they can talk to. It's wonderful. Again, a conversation that your mom and dad might not have with you, but they might have with that spiritual counselor. Ministry services are provided, like I said, Eucharistic, prayer, Bible studies, and they're brought into the community. My mother is in a small home situation, and she's receiving Eucharistic ministry. So, again, she's partaken in something that you would have never been able to do had she been at home and really subject to home, because of the fact that she's not had transportation to get out to a place of worship. So that was all taken into consideration. Once we develop this whole profile, what are we ready for? We're ready to tour. So I now might have had, prior to our conversation, maybe 15 choices in your area. I call it a silo. Once we have those 4 pillars, now we're putting those in, and some of them are going to filter out and some of them remain. So I usually like to narrow down to about 4 that we go down to, we can actually do tours. During COVID, we had to do virtual tours. We weren't able to go out physically, but now it's totally different, that the doors are open, that we can actually do physical tours. I very much have a scheduled tour, because my time and my prospective resident, my clients' time is just as precious as their time. So if I have an hour window to work with you, I want your undivided attention.
Exactly.
And all focus to be put on my prospective resident. We're meeting administration. We are meeting the executive director. We're meeting the director of nursing. Of course, the sales director is the one who's doing the tour. We're meeting even the activities director. We're meeting everybody there. And it's usually during that time we meet fellow residents as well. And
Yes.
how does that happen? We usually have a meal. May it be at lunchtime that we actually have a meal and they bring in an ambassador over. That's going to be your first friend or your first knowing of a person in that community. This way you could actually enjoy to see what that meal is like, what their menu is like, the selections that you're able to have. But also, sometimes we have the capability of actually engaging them in one of their activities. Maybe it might be 15 minutes of a bingo game. Whatever the activity is, we're trying to get them engaged so they could see the whole ambiance and what the amenities of the community has to offer. We see the whole community. Just because mom and dad is assisted right now doesn't mean that we're not looking at memory care. We want them to see what life will be like after they graduate there as well too. I always apartments and the way how it is laid out rather than see an apartment that's not set up already, because they can't envision it. We walk away with floor plans, we walk away with a lot. I work differently than a lot of others. I am on this tour because I know they're going to forget to ask questions. I'll say, you wanted to ask this. Let me remind you, what about this? Because I'm going to bring up these subjects that they might be embarrassed to ask or they have forgotten. I give them a folder. They make all their documentation, all their notes. They put all the floor plans, everything within this folder. So now they can do a great comparison study amongst all the assisted livings that we tour. Okay. So what other considerations do we have to take in, when you're working with a placement company such as Golden Rule? What type of communities does the senior loved one see themselves really residing throughout their golden years? We have these conversations. Is the community pet friendly? That is important because they do not want to leave their fur baby behind. What accommodations and services does the community provide? A lot of them have beauty salons, barbershops. Can't say beauty salons all the time. Barbershops are okay. In-house therapy, a lot of them have that. Do they have transportation? All that, a lot are in the brick and mortar, but even in the smaller communities, they have beauticians or barbers that actually come in to the homes and provide, hairstyling, nail care, whatever that it may be. So I don't want to say that's exempt if it's not a brick and mortar, a large community. What other types of senior living options are there? Just as I'm mentioning, they're also called adult family care homes or residential care homes. They're a home that are not with signage, doesn't have brick and mortar to it, but they are a more home-like environment. My mom now resides in a 10 resident home. And she's got her own private room. It feels like home. It's a great atmosphere. Home cooked meals. Nothing to say anything. This is more conducive for her lifestyle at this point.
And it comes down to personality. Some people will function better in a home-like environment than they will in a larger community. And other people wouldn't. Some people, I can't just have that, with the smaller residential care homes, it's very important to tour as well, because you need to make sure you're going to get along with the other residents. And some of them do have shared situations. Your mother is blessed to have a single room, but some do have a shared room. And I've found that a lot of seniors that start out in a private room to save money in the future when care is needed, they move in with a friend. And they now share an apartment, which can save the money in the future as well.
And you know what? They're already friends. So yes, great insight there. Absolutely.
I talked to one lady who was her mother passed away just before she was going to college, and her grandmother was needing assisted living at the same time. And so she had become the caretaker of her grandmother. And so they toured colleges and assisted livings in all the areas that she was interested in going to college with. And she said that her grandmother remembered touring colleges with her mom, and it was a really good, but it's very similar because you got to find the right fit.
Yes.
You're a lot, so yeah. So that just reminded me of that story.
It is, because it is a change. How do I want to say? It's an emotional journey for everybody that's involved, especially for that resident, because we talked about, the independence that they feel like they're living or losing through, but also they also like, okay, these are my last days. It's a reality sets in. We make it joyous. Honestly, I hold their hands. I give a lot of hugs. It was really hard during COVID to be able to be so hands-on.
Right.
And just because it is appropriate for today, I'm constantly following up with my clients. I will go ahead and go and visit them on a regular basis, see how they're doing. But at the same time, I'm getting feedback because some families are out of state or out of town, and they don't have that option of doing that. But I want to hear it hands-on so we can make the change, adjust. I don't want to hear of a casualty 5 months from now when we could have nipped it in the bud.
Exactly.
This is all, it's a testing measure and to see really how it works. Most placement agencies, because you see is what you get. I'm very transparent and I work very, very hard to provide my free services to clients. And people like, you're free? Yes, I'm free. I have a whole host of resources that we tap into. I provide movers and downsizing companies, real estate agents that are all like-minded like ourselves to really embrace that senior. So there is not the family that might be out of state or local. Wow, I got to do all this now. Nope, we got this together. So,
and that's what's so important. No one really realizes how hard it is for a senior to downsize or leave the home. And for you to give resources out is very important because in senior living, and more so than most industries, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And now, you know me and you know Linda. And so, you want to tap into resources who know. And if they don't know an answer or they don't provide that service, they know someone who does. And they know exactly what's going to be entailed when it comes to relocating your loved one.
Absolutely. And home sweet home is where we have arrived to.
Right.
And again, I will stress my services are complimentary. I do, over the years of having so much experience in senior living and as an administrator, it's advantageous to work with a personalized placement company, just the same working with you, Amy, because that's it. I'm working with Amy. I'm not working with a corporation that I really don't know who I'm speaking to today. It will always be Amy. It will always be Linda. So nothing gets lost in translation. I'd like people to go to my website, Amy, because it does have a little bit of my bio. It does give examples of all the various options that we spoke about. There's testimonials there. There's my demographics, but more importantly, there's video talks, which this one will be on my website after it's recorded and downloaded. But there is video talks every Tuesday or every other Tuesday now. I do Tuesday talks on various subjects. Today I will be talking about, today is my Tuesday talk schedule, and it's about hurricane preparedness because we're all preparing. We're young. We're preparing. What about your 90-year-old mother and father at home that has no tools to be able to do this, and you are many miles away? So we don't wait for that occasion to arrive. Let's make sure emergent situations are thought about now.
Exactly.
So
we have that hurricane impending on us now, so it's a perfect time for you to do that chat. Well, thank you again so much for coming on Ask Amy About Aging today. And I look forward to having you come again on my show. And I look forward to possibly being on one of your Tuesday talks.
Absolutely. And you are one of my care partners now. So I'm excited.
Well, Linda, thank you so much for joining us today from Golden Rule Senior Placement Services. Again, this is Amy K. Gaskin, Agent Maven Aficionado. Have a great day.
Bye-bye. God bless.
God bless.